Welcome to Being Patient Live Talks. I'm Mark New, reporter at Being Patient. Today we have a guest who has a wealth of knowledge to share on mild cognitive impairment and in providing care too. She's a former nurse who was diagnosed with MCI, and she still continues with a very active lifestyle involved with a number of very unique projects. I'd like to welcome SuAnne Cobb to the show. SuAnne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to be here.
Now, you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I think when you were 34 years old, right? So
Correct.
that's probably
Correct.
just a few years ago, right?
Well, I'm
Um,
72 now, so I've had it quite a while. Yeah.
so how did you begin to notice that there might be something else wrong?
Um, I guess it was after I had had MS about 15 years. I began to see that I was struggling with some short-term memory issues, and I was beginning to have trouble with word finding. And I think all of us at some time or another, if we're tired or stressed or, didn't sleep well, whatever, we can momentarily forget a word. But mine became noticeable enough to me and some of my colleagues that it kind of became a running joke, like I could draw them the picture of the word. If it was a noun, I could describe it usually with using the thesaurus in my head, but I couldn't think of that word. And so I just noticed it. And gradually over time, it began to be more and more noticeable. And after I retired, I pressed my neurologist who follows me for MS to have me tested. And she actually has a clinical psychologist that comes in and does testing in her office because MS has a very high rate of folks with mild to moderate cognitive impairment. 40 to 60% of all MS patients have this. And it makes sense if you think about what MS does. There are the myelin sheath that covers the nerves, gets irritated and angry, and then does what they call sclerosis or scar. And so the messages that go down those nerves, it's like hitting an obstacle in the path. And so that's why sometimes things don't work for us. And if that's happening in your brain, which is where a lot of the lesions are, then it makes sense that there would be some consequence of that. And that's where the mild to moderate cognitive impairment comes. In MS, it doesn't usually progress like other types of cognitive disorders. It's pretty rare for anybody to become severely impacted by cognitive issues. So it doesn't progress like the other more well-known types of causes for dementia, but it can certainly interfere with the way you used to function and the way you'd like to function in your daily life, which I have found to be true for me.
Did you find that you were thinking that, oh, this may just be part of MS and not have to do with anything else? I mean, did that go on for some time, or did you know pretty quickly with your background as a nurse?
I pretty much knew that it was due to my MS. And I had discussed it with my neurologist on a couple of visits prior to me saying, look, this is more than just, me getting older. This is, and I really would appreciate being tested. And so she set it up. And then I've been tested every 2 to 3 years since then. And
And
it's stayed.
tell us about that testing process. Originally, when you first had the test, and also you're saying that you have follow-up tests or every few years.
Right.
Is that the same as that for Chelsea?
I think it's the same for any of those of us with cognitive impairment. I think it's that same battery of tests. People joke about having to draw the clock and practicing drawing the clock and studying. But a lot of it is to test your sequential memory, your recall memory, your processing, and your ability to problem solve. And so it's a battery of tests. It took about 4 or 5 hours to do the whole test. And I thought, well, if I didn't have it before, I sure have it. It was exhausting to do the testing, but that's what they do. And that's what they repeat and compare your scores to see if there's been any progression. So.
And tell us more about the connection between MS and MCI. And the symptoms that you have, are there some that really stand out that most people without MS and that they have an MCI, they wouldn't have those particular symptoms? Are there some very unique symptoms that you have felt?
I think that the symptoms of the mild cognitive impairment are much the same of anybody. We know that there's a large umbrella, and underneath that of cognitive disorders, and underneath there are over 300 different causes for cognitive impairment, and caused by all kinds of things. Which certainly Alzheimer's is probably the best known one. And then there are vascular types of dementia due to poor circulation. And then there is Lewy body, which has become more known recently, often because people that are in the news end up having that diagnosis. Robin Williams had that diagnosis. Parkinson's has a dementia type component for some people. So I don't know that my symptoms were any different due to having the MS. I'm more like people with other MCI diagnoses. It's just that if you think about those pathways being interrupted, and that's what happens with tangles with Alzheimer's folks, and compromised vascular. You don't have as much of the blood flow, and so you can become impaired that way. But the symptoms and presentation and the things that I struggle with are very, very similar to other people with MCI.
Mhm. Are there any signs that when you look back now, you thought that, oh, I may have missed that, or that was a sign that, you know, I should have known about, even though it's very difficult when all these things tend to merge?
It's true. I think I was pretty aware of what was going on and why. And at the time, was in more of an administrative and a manager position. I wasn't with my nursing career, and I wasn't involved in giving daily patient care. And so I was able to manage using some strategies. I certainly have developed more and more strategies as I've gotten older, and once I was diagnosed, and it kind of shows itself in my day-to-day life more. And it got to a point, though, I did retire early from nursing. I took retirement at 62. And because I began to feel like, and there are lots of ways to practice nursing. I mean, so many. But I couldn't think of any one area that I could practice that if I truly forgot something, it might cause harm. And I felt so strongly about that. I was not going to, ethically or my own personal integrity, I was not going to practice a career where my MCI might be the cause of someone having harm. So I did retire from nursing at age 62. And like you say, I've gotten busy with other projects that I find very rewarding, and I do have the opportunity often to care for those, but not in a way of managing a care plan or their medications or things like that. So, but in terms of caring, emotionally support, and that, and providing emotional support and that type of thing.
And having cared, as your profession, was it tough for you to sort of let go? I know sometimes people in the healthcare field want to manage everything themselves when, it's putting too much on your shoulders.
Right. I think there is that, I call it like your professional codependence that kind of channels you into some of these caring fields. And self-care certainly enables you to, I think, practice your chosen care profession in a healthier way. I think that because I knew that in my own estimation, I couldn't be 100% safe doing it, it was easy for me to step out of it. But that doesn't mean that it was easy to give up that connection I had with my career. I mean, I had, since I was 21 years old, I had been a nurse. And there was just always that feeling that, in my life, if I needed to, I could get a good job. I could provide for myself. I could do all those things. And so I think there was a grief involved in stepping away from the career of nursing. And I think I'm not unusual in that a lot of folks, when they retire, feel that. Uh, and yet, if you voluntarily retired and it hasn't been due to an illness or cognitive decline, it might be a little different process. But to not identify as much as I did earlier as a nurse, that was hard in the beginning. Yes.
But also, I'm all talking about allowing yourself to be helped when you
Oh, that
need
part.
to
Yes.
help somebody.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That is hard. Thank you for clarifying that. I think it is. I've just been in the role of taking care of others, and so I do get uncomfortable when I have to ask for help. And certainly, I do have to ask for help more with my cognitive impairment. I have a wife, and she is amazingly supportive and patient and kind to me. And yet I know it's very frustrating. And we both participate in a support group, which we could chat about if you want to. But I just, I just find that often I will tend to overdo things because I don't want to admit that I'm too tired mentally or too tired physically. You know, I have the MS where I have to kind of titrate my physical energy. And then I have the cognitive impairment, and that requires me to kind of I either titrate that energy or it absolutely runs out, and I'm just sort of, not fit to be around after about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I've just used it all up. So, and there are better days than others. Some days I have a lot more trouble with my word finding. I was hoping today wouldn't be one of those days since I was going to be talking to you. So, but yeah, it's hard. I think it is harder for me to ask for help. Definitely.
We'll talk about your, support group that you work with in a moment. But first of all, I want to talk a little more about the symptoms. I heard that you have a lot of difficulty with hearing or noise levels, right? Tell me about
I
that.
do. I am extremely noise sensitive. And my neurologist and I talked about that on Wednesday. And
Whoops.
and I have had COVID 4 times, tinnitus after the first one, which has stayed. And I do think, though, my noise sensitivity has been a part of my MCI, because I had that prior to having COVID. I think it may have been exacerbated and worsened by having COVID and the tinnitus. But yes, I am extremely, extremely sensitive to noise, and especially sudden loud noises, but also just a real high level of noise. And one of the ways that I have developed to deal with that is I have my noise canceling earbud pods, and that really helps a lot. If we're close enough, like sitting across from each other in a restaurant, I can hear that person talking, but it muffles all the background noise enough for me to be more comfortable. And what it really creates is I start to get very anxious in really loud environments, and I really want to leave. I want to get away from it, which makes sense because it's extremely uncomfortable. So that has not been easy. Also, if I'm in a group of people, let's say there's 6 of us that or 8 of us that have gone out to eat. If more than one person is talking at a time, I have a very hard time even zeroing in on one of those conversations. It just all gets kind of jumbled together. And then I just find myself trying to smile politely and nod here and there. But it's hard. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to participate in the conversation because I can't really follow any of them when they're all talking at the same time. So.
And doctors have said that that's probably due to the MCI as opposed to MS.
Yes, yes. Um, I think it is. I am my neurologist. I do have a otolaryngologist, an ENT specialist, ENT doctor. So she wants me to have a full evaluation for it. from her, and then they will more than likely refer me to an audiologist. There's some newer techniques of maybe having a device in my ear that emits low white noise, and supposedly that tricks your brain into following the white noise and not the other noise. So we'll see how that works, but that is one of the most disturbing symptoms that I deal with every day. And I mean, my wife knows. She goes, "Okay, I'm gonna print something on the printer because it makes a very loud, sudden, starting up noise that nobody else would probably think was loud, but it'll just send me, with my fingernails in the ceiling if I don't know to expect it." So yeah,
Are you taking any treatments for MCI?
I am. I am not particularly. The type that I have. My neurologist really doesn't want to start me on anything right now. And she thinks that I'm coping pretty well, and I agree with her. I think that I am living my best with my memory loss. And so I really don't, because the cause of my MCI is different than some of the other things. The research is more geared towards specific disease processes like Alzheimer's and Lewy body and Parkinson's, as opposed to that caused by MS.
Now, you started getting involved in support groups, advocacy, and you took on a leadership role as chair of the board of directors for a local support group called
Mhm.
Sharing Experiences Together. Tell us about it.
Well, there was a female attorney and a male physician who were both diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in their 50s, mid 50s. And they were participating in some of the Alzheimer's Tennessee um, groups. And they struck up a friendship and met for coffee. And they said, "This is great and we love it, but what would it be like if we started a support group where everybody in the group, including the facilitator, uh, had a diagnosis of MCI?" And and there are lots of models of that, other types of 12-step groups and things where everybody has an issue. And so they started a group, and a friend of mine husband was in that group, and I was sharing with her my difficulties, and she said, "I think you'd love this group." And I said, "Well, I don't have Alzheimer's." She said, "I don't think it matters." And so I started attending very early, not long after it started. And I've been a part of that group for 7 or 8 years. And I am currently chairman of the board. We're a nonprofit here and have gotten a couple of local grants from Purple Alliance. And we have two groups, one in Knoxville and one in the Oak Ridge area, as well as a online Zoom group that meets for people that either can't leave their home or don't want to leave their home. And so all through COVID, all our groups kept meeting on Zoom. We kept our community together. And so right now we have about 12 or 13 active in the North Knoxville group, which I also facilitate. And it's just very rewarding to be with people, and we all suffer the same type of symptoms, and we may be in different phases of the cognitive issues, and some have progressed. And through the years, we certainly have had members who have passed on. However, it's just been a vital group for me, and I've enjoyed that. And it was through that I was asked to participate in the podcast that you referenced earlier, Living Our Best with Memory Loss. So
That's right. And tell us about this podcast. It's a very special podcast, and tell us from the start. It's
okay.
Living Our Best with Memory Loss, and you are a co-host.
I am one of the co-hosts. We have four co-hosts. Lori Stryer is the CEO and executive producer at River, RIVR Media in Knoxville, Tennessee. And she does all types of programs all over the world, really. And her husband was diagnosed with MCI due to vascular impairment. And and then she had also met another one of the co-hosts, Dennis Lowe, who I think you all have also interviewed. And so Dennis is a part of our Sharing Experiences support group. And so as it was getting started, he said, "Hey, there's this podcast and I think you'd really enjoy it. Why don't you come along and hear about it and do it with us?" And so I did, and I really loved doing it. I was incredibly nervous to start with. And Laurie has a way of just putting you right at ease. And the beautiful thing when you're not live streaming like we are now is you can go back and edit. So, or you can stop and redo a little question and get what you wanted to say better. So, so I really have enjoyed it. And I think we're up to over 1,000 subscribers now. And we have followers all over the world. And it's very rewarding to share. And that's how that's how we got involved. And I think you got my name was through that podcast. So,
So did you ever dream you would be a multimedia host?
no, I never did. And I noticed that you had me down as a podcaster. I thought, I never thought of myself as a podcaster. That's great. No, I didn't. I thought about writing a blog when I was diagnosed about what it was like. However, I think this is better because it is very spontaneous. I mean, we may have a guest and we've all studied the guest and looked at their stuff online as much as we can, and they may have given us a few questions to kick things off, and yet it's just very organic in the way that it evolves, or you come to a question, and I just love that. Yeah. So
What advice can you offer to those embarking on this journey?
well, the first thing is to have a great team. And the first team is your providers, your healthcare providers. And through some of the guests we've interviewed, we know that unfortunately, not everybody primary care provider is as well informed as we'd like for them to be about cognitive impairment. But to keep being your advocate, or to have a loved one go with you so that they can be your advocate and get referred for testing and follow up, because the sooner you are tested, the more is available we have there's about 12 active members in our support group, and I believe 5 of those 12s are in research clinical trials right now. And so it's and one person is having remarkable results, and as well as feeling like you're giving back to future generations. So please get diagnosed as soon as you can. And I mentioned a loved one, and whether that's a biological loved one or a chosen loved one, have support through your friends and family, maybe your faith community if you have one, and let them know what your needs are and how they can best support you. They're not mind readers. They love us, and they may say, "Oh, that's not that bad. I lose my keys all the time." Well, yeah, it's more than just losing your keys, So, and they don't mean that. They're not, they're very well intentioned. They don't want us to feel bad. And yet, I think the more direct we can be with them about what we need, the better. And then I think to find a support group of people of like mind. And the Alzheimer's organizations all over the country are a great place to start. And hopefully they will offer you a wide menu of what you could participate in. And then the beauty of the tragedy of COVID was that out of that came Zoom. And I think people are much more comfortable participating in things like we're doing today. You're in the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, so I just think that although I would have loved to have come and met you in person in San Francisco, but I think that we have this way of connecting. So what I tell people about cognitive impairment is we need to eat brain rich foods, lots of vegetables and dark leafy greens and things like that. We need to move. We need to keep moving as much as we can in terms of exercise we enjoy. And we also need connection. And I think that for me has meant the difference and has added a lot of richness to my life.
SuAnne, thank you for being on our show to share your work and insight. I'm sure it will resonate with many members of our audience. And thanks to our community for tuning in. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter on beingpatient.com, where we'll keep you up to date on all the upcoming talks. See you next time.